Oh, oh, we're taking off his mask in the first episode. Oh, it's gonna be some people big mad about that one. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. After many years of gestational hell for this series and many other video game series, Bioshock now just getting off the ground. Halo, the first live action adaptation of Halo after me being sharing and being through many hands. Halo the series is finally here. First episode called Contact has dropped on Paramount Plus. Obviously, based on these gaming series of the same name that has spanned 20 plus years and had many different iterations from RPGs to live action to all everything in between. It is a massive franchise, and so this is the first time they were seeing it for live action, and I feel like out the gate, they're doing everything humanly possible to be like, cool, here's Halo. Now forget everything you possibly do about Halo. And that's for good or bad. I don't think this is a series that is making itself or leaning itself dependent on you have to be a Halo fan to enjoy it, nor do I think Halo fans are going to just automatically absorb and love it because there's enough differences for both factions that I think they'll find that common ground in the middle and sort of be that sweet spot. I always give sci-fi shows a bit of a longer leash than I do pretty much any other show. Sci-fi shows have a hard time because they have to sort of establish lore, establish the world, and then establish whatever main character there is. So I typically give about three episodes. Pilot episodes are always hard for sci-fi. Sometimes they're not finding their ground, their voice they haven't heard yet until they get to that fifth episode. Hell, in the case of something like Star Trek Discovery, I think that whole first season was sort of with them trying to find their ground. So Halo's first episode, it works for me, despite some things that I kind of just think are a little bit old hat, if you will. It begins very much like a Halo episode you would expect to be. I mean, it's full on. You're seeing Master Chief thrown into the elements of stopping basically the Covenant from attacking a rebel base. Or we'll call it a rebel base, but it's an insurrection invasion, Madrigal, where they're wiping out people left and right. It is bloody and violent. I immediately realized that when I was playing the Halo game, I didn't really take into account how bloody it is because you sever limbs with that laser sword. You're shooting people with these like plasma guns, and you're like, oh yeah, they're dead. But then you see them being all like done on a one to one in real life, and like, oh yeah, we're like severing limbs and blood is flying all over the place. That is a lot more violent than I think I ever anticipated it to be. But that's what you get here. You get to see it. But that's just the opening sequence. Before we even get the credits of what we're going to see in the opening, like, ah moment, that's just the thing that sort of give those Halo fans a taste and then they yank it away. We're never going to get back to that moment, at least not in this episode, and probably not for a while. They are establishing a lore. They are giving Halo, this version of Halo, an entire world to play with as opposed to anything that is common known from the Halo games. Um, we do have Cortana, but it's right now she's just a form of the doctor that sort of runs the Spartan program. And these guys are like these alpha males who've had their brain. They're basically like RoboCop. They've had their brains wiped, and they are here to do a job. Most of the world fears them. They are the greatest of the greatest of the best, of the best, of the best, of the best. But that is sort of their mission. And so people don't really have a side. They do what's best for whatever political puppet is pulling those strings. Uh, and so on this saving mission of Madrigal, they're a little late. They do wipe out all the Covenant, or most of the Covenant that is there, but in doing so, none of the survivors are left except for one person. After claiming that there are no survivors, he then hears one, and that Quan is still alive. Before they head back, they are just clearing things. He gets drawn to a cave where he finds an artifact that he's sort of drawn to. He touches it and immediately starts opening up memories. Like there's a reaction to some Fifth Element type reaction that happens when he touches it. Lights start going all over the place, and Master Chief starts having memories. memories that have supposed to have been seared away or blocked away and not able to be accessed. He gets them. One of the Covenant people are kind of watching there, the aliens there, and he's kind of like, "Oh, that's new," and he runs off and tells his folks that, "Hey, something was odd with this," and he reacted to this artifact differently. But they take the artifact and the Quan onto the ship, and they start heading back to their base where they're supposed to be heading. While there, the main thing that sort of happens is that there's this political pull of who is Quan, why is he back, why is she back. Quan and Master Chief sort of have a conversation. Quan lets Master Chief that they've met before, and that the previous time that they met is when he killed her mother. He doesn't recall that. It was a mission. I feel like his memories go from one to one. He doesn't remember any of that. But she does, and she doesn't have any photos of her mom, but she always sees Master Chief and the Spartans spread all over the place because you guys are the best warriors of the world. While that's happening, Master Chief gets a marker in his visor that he's supposed to take out Quan, and he blatantly ignores it. Cuts off. He blatantly ignores it. He cuts off all cams in the ship, and so there's this battle that is happening with the two of them on the ship. There's a battle happening on home base, sort of getting prepped. And Master Chief has always been sort of the boy soldier. So him now stepping out of line, they're questioning and they're kind of galvanizing the forces there to accept the ship, so that when they come in, they can kind of stop this. They cut the air off in the ship. They do everything humanly possible to try to detain the situation and make it so that Master Chief becomes compliable, but to no avail. They end up shooting off the ability to then disengaging the autopilot so that they can man the ship themselves. But while they're doing that, they're surrounded, and so they get they're right at the home base. They finally got control of the ship. They're going to fly off, but and they're surrounded. Cortana is sort of, I'm keep calling that, but the Doctor continues to tell the rest of the Spartans that, hey, if something goes down and they try to shoot Master Chief, they're like, yeah, we know what to do. We got it. We'll guard that, because they've got a bunch of soldiers ready to take him out. And then there's a moment where something draws John. At this point, he's taking his helmet off, which I think is a big part of this series. Master Chief, for all the films, I mean, all the games that we've played, have always kept his helmet on. It's a huge thing for him to take it off, and we have Pablo playing him, and he's doing great. He's doing fine. But I think this definitely differs itself from something like Boba Fett or Mandalorian, those other sci-fis where they keep it on all the time. You get to see the face. It is weird, I will say, seeing it's necessary, and it gives a connection, because the point is he is offering himself and making himself vulnerable enough for Quan to take him out. She doesn't take the shot, but they have this back and forth where there's starting to be a trust level built, even though he's this trained killer. So he gives him moments like, if you're going to kill me, you're not going to do it through any of this armor. So I'm going to take my helmet off, and this is where you need to aim. But it's crazy. They can see when the helmet comes off. They can see everything that happens in that ship. Those folks that are watching that Spartan program can see it. But when all weapons are drawn and they're ready to sort of commandeer the ship, Master Chief goes back to that artifact, which is in the middle of the ship, and he touches it, and he has that same glowing thing. So this time, basically, an EMP goes off, and all power is taken away from the base, all weapons, everything, and then is turned back into the ship, and the ship is able to fly off. But also in his dreams, he gets more visions, and in that vision, he sees that he drew the artifact that he's touching when he was a kid. So now there's clearly some type of connection between him and this artifact, and now it's going to be a matter of trying to figure out what that is. And that's the episode. A lot of plot, like story threads being developed. You're starting to see power plays, who's over who's against whom. And so other than the very opening sequence, it feels very unlike Halo. It feels very much like Star Trek, those type of political sci-fi shows, and less of like the action oriented. I think we're going to get that. We're going to get more of that. That's going to come down the line. That's why they dropped the seed of it for you to kind of let you know that it's here. But we have to establish some bases and some guidelines and some rules for this world. And I think it does a pretty decent job of doing that. I do think that the way this is set up, it probably would have been better served, even though there's only nine, I think 9 episodes of this, it may have been better served to give us two at once. I think with sci-fi, with pretty much any show nowadays, they give you two or three to sort of get into the groove. You sort of feel that the story thread. You can see where they're going, and then you kind of end that ride. Doing one is a bold move, but I think it's clear they spent the budget. They spent the money. They've already signed on for season two, so they're giving this show and this series legs to sort of build this world out. And I, for one, think it's a smart move, and I'm excited to see kind of where it goes next. I'm a sci-fi nut. This is right in my wheelhouse. And just to have the sheen or the skin of Halo on top of it, I'm curious to see how they interact and interweave more of the Halo world into it. It gives me hope for future gaming franchises like Bioshock. I know has just gotten picked up, and maybe we can get a Gears of War type of series or film, and maybe they can see that always went for the big budget theatrical release. Even though Uncharted is doing well, it's not as well received. Not that well received from the gaming audience, but it's a fun movie. It's perfectly fine. But I think it might behoove people to get a little bit more under the hood of these things by like taking long form content and doing these, spending a little bit of money and doing this on these streaming platforms, these network platforms. But first episode, solid. It's not a home run, but it's a really good base hit that I think can build to a future that we can get to a point where this could be one of the better sci-fi shows that are on television. What did you guys think about the first episode of Halo, the series? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere that plays podcasts. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.